Hey guys, so I thought since we're about to hit our draft day, I would try and fit in a quick mock of what I think will happen. So I don't think I did this for this league last year, but I decided to try and do it this year, so hopefully you guys have some fun with it and enjoy it. And spoiler alert, the Ravens are going to be the team to beat. Just saying. So if that's all you came to hear, then you can move on now. So let's get started. So first pick shouldn't be any surprise. The Ravens need a quarterback, and Trevor Lawrence is the guy. So I don't think I need to say any more about that. The Texans also have a long ways to go, and to me it makes sense that another quarterback would come off the board here, and basically it could be, I misspelled his name there, whoops. To me it could be any of the quarterbacks, but Zach Wilson is the one who's most likely to start right away, so that's why I put him there. The Eagles, much to Ant's dismay, they need wide receivers, and Jamar Chase is the best one. So Eagles get, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in this draft. Pick number 4, it's the Ravens again, and they are building their dynasty. Najee Harris is sitting here for them to take, and they could use a running back to round out that room. Pick number 5, again, this is, it could be any of the quarterbacks, but Trey Lance probably has the next best chance to start, in my opinion. He's the third guy, and since Ant missed out on his wide receiver, and he kind of needs a quarterback, this is where I have him going. And yeah, he'll probably take the 24-hour clock, but I think it's only 12. Just saying. Rams need some help at running back, so to me, Travis Etienne makes sense for them. It looks like he could potentially be catching a lot of passes, which could up his value over just a runner if he spends more time catching passes. So my guess, prediction-wise, is that maybe we could see something like, I don't know, say 70 catches and 1,000 yards and maybe 500 rushing yards. So I would take that any day of the week. Guess who's back? It's the Ravens again. And now they get the second best wide receiver. So they've got the best quarterback, the best running back, and arguably the second best, if not tied for first best wide receiver. And the draft's just getting going. The Steelers need a quarterback, so I went with Mac Jones, but Fields could be the guy here too. Kind of a what your flavor is and who you think might start faster. So we'll see what he does there. Now it's my pick, the Titans, and if Kyle Pitts falls to me, he's not falling any further. I am a big fan of Pitts, and I think he could be the next Calvin Johnson. Even though he's listed as tight end, I would be so frustrated with them if they try and keep him at tight end. It's one thing to label him as a tight end and, move him all over the place. It's another to try and make him an inline tight end, especially when they've got Hurst, who's a very capable blocker and receiver in his own right. So to me, I see him playing a much more wide receiver type role. So if he's here, I'm taking him. If he's not, full disclosure, I may trade out of this pick because I'm not in love with a whole lot of people after this. So, spoiler alert, maybe I'm tipping my hand here, but it would be tough to pass up on him. And they didn't have any stock images of him, so I had to go with some of the school emblems for some of these so that I don't get dinged for copyright. So the Steelers need more offensive help, and Jaylen Waddle's still sitting there. And I think if he can stay healthy, then pick 10 might be a steal for this guy. It gives me a little pause that he's so small. He's not as thick as Tyreek Hill, I don't think. So I worry a little bit about injuries with him, but it would be tough to pass him up with a top 10 pick. The Seahawks also needs more offensive help, and I kind of see that as being how this draft will go, is that there's going to be a lot of offensive guys pushed up the board, even if there may be a little bit more of projects. I also spelled his name wrong. I apologize. But Bateman could be, even though he's with the Ravens, where he may not get as many targets, I heard a lot of people call him the next Devonte Adams. So if they actually throw to him, he could be a really good pickup at pick 11. What football team? What are they going to do? I have them taking whatever quarterback's left. In this case, it was Justin Fields, but it could be Mac Jones, it could be Trey Lance, just whoever's there. Guess who's back again? The Ravens. And now I know this pick might seem a bit high, but I'm not sure that Gordon can stay healthy for a full year in Denver. So to me, Ravens needed more running back help, and to me, this was like the next safest pick at a position of need, and I don't think that they'd get him later. So this Ravens team is absolutely loaded, so I feel like they can kind of pick for need, and Javonte Williams could end up being a huge steal if Gordon gets hurt or doesn't produce very well. Williams could get a bunch of carries. At pick 14, it was tough for me with the Bills. I didn't know where they might go because they're okay at some of the offensive positions, and there just wasn't a lot of value. So I had them take Parsons, who I think could be a Devin White type linebacker if he's given the chance. So to me, we're talking 250 points plus, and at pick 14, offensive or defensive, I'm taking the 250 plus points. So I think he could be way up there for the next 9 to 10 years. So I see this as being a pretty good value pick, even though it's not offense. Lions need help at wide receiver, and to me, Elijah Moore is the next best one. He's a little bit loaded there with the Giants and with the uncertainty around Danny Jones, but I think he was overlooked a little bit in the real draft, and I think he could be a pretty good pickup for the Lions who need some wide receiver help. The Bucks, again, I struggled giving them an offensive player just because of how their team is built and where the value is right now. So I gave them Jamin Davis, who, again, should be a 200 plus at minimum in that Redskins defense or Washington football team defense. I knew I was going to mess that up. So I think he could be a big time points producer. And I think he fits better than some of the offensive pieces at this point for the Bucs. The Vikings need defensive help, and they could use some offensive help too. But again, I struggled finding players that I felt had good value at this pick. So I had them go with another linebacker with Zaven Collins, who could be a absolute beast down in Arizona. They've got a pretty amazing core down there, and he should have lots of opportunities for tackles and sacks, depending on where they play him. So I view him as a major points producer as well. The Steelers, again, they could go offense, but I feel like there's a lot of offensive players off the board already who maybe are getting pushed up just because there's so much uncertainty with some of them, and they could really use a defensive end. So I went with the pick from the Colts, who could turn out to be a pretty good value at 18. Vikings again, couldn't find an offensive player I thought that they could use at this point, so I had them go defense again. They need help at defensive end, and if Phillips can stay healthy, he could be another steal and be pushing up towards that 200-point mark, which I view as pretty good value. And the Vikings pick again. And here I finally gave in and gave them a player on offense that maybe they need. And I felt like Michael Carter could, as he's on the Jets, could end up with a pretty decent role in that offense. If I remember right, Coleman is really the only guy who's above him. And then there's Michael Pirine, who didn't show much last year. So Coleman, at best, is going to need some rest now and then, which should give Carter a chance to play. And at worst, Coleman's going to get hurt again, and Carter could get thrust into the starting role. So I felt like this was an okay gamble to take because you're going to get points out of him. It's just a matter of how much. Dolphins need some help on offense, so I went with Terrace Marshall here. I just felt like he was the next best wide receiver, and since a lot of the offensive weapons are off the board, this is where I start to see maybe some reaches going because we're all going to start to panic about how are we going to get points out of our positions. So Marshall made the most sense. Giants again need some defensive line help, much like they do in real life, or did in real life. And so, again, Rousseau is kind of a projection pick because, yes, he's raw, and he didn't play last year. He opted out. But if he lives up to potential in Buffalo, we could be seeing close to a 200-point defensive end up there, in my opinion. Texans need everything. So I gave them a wide receiver that I thought has some upside if given the opportunities. Might be a little slow for him this year, but Texans are not going to compete this year. Sorry to break it to you if you didn't know it already. But so this is kind of a pick I view as get some points this year, and next year we're going to see more out of him. The Dolphins need help, and they needed a running back. So I was looking around at running backs, and Hubbard kind of sticks out to me because he was a pretty good runner in college, and he's playing behind Christian McCaffrey. And McCaffrey's going to get some rest this year, even if he's healthy. So Hubbard's next in line for those touches. And if McCaffrey gets hurt, then Hubbard could be the guy going forward. And we saw what Mike Davis did in that offense. I think Hubbard could do the same. So to me, this is a pick of, well, I need it, and this is the best player that's still here. I think he could go in the second round, but maybe need pushes him up into the first. The Raiders take my other favorite player in this draft, JOK. And I'm going to try and pronounce his name from Notre Dame. But in the other league that I was in, he went, I think it was the late second round, and I think he's very undervalued there. So I could totally see him going higher, and the Raiders could use a safety and a linebacker. So I think that whichever position JOK gets listed at or plays at, it'll be a big upgrade for the Raiders, and I see him as being a major point getter. I'm thinking he's going to be pushing 200 plus points. So to me, that's a win at that point, especially considering there's the offensive talent that's left. I'm going with a good defensive player here. The Bills do need some offense. So again, I was kind of looking, and this might be pushing quite a bit, but I think regardless of who the Packers quarterback is this year, Amari Rodgers could be in line for a big year as a rookie. If it's Rodgers, Rodgers has a history of loving his slot wide receivers, going back to Randall Cobb. And we, as a Packer fan, we've been missing someone like Cobb, and that's kind of who Amari Rodgers compares to. And if it's Love, we could maybe see more of a college-style offense potentially, with a lot of shorter checkdowns and routes, in which case Rodgers could be a major player in there. So I think this is a risk-reward pick for the Bills because, yeah, he might not have a good year, but given the right circumstances, he could really blow up and give you some pretty good value for being pick 26. Hey, look, it's Ant again. And we all know that he's going to do something to surprise us all. So I have him taking a running back here. For some reason, I just have a feeling that running back is on his radar because Bell is a free agent still. So you're going to need someone to run the ball. And he's got Kareem Hunt and Ronald Jones, but who knows what happens with Ronald Jones. And he's got Lamar Miller, but who knows what's going to happen with Lamar Miller. And he's pretty loaded at wide receiver. So to me, this is another risk-reward pick. He's got a lot of money tied up in one running back especially. So Sermon in the 49ers offense, if he's healthy, could actually end up being a huge steal at this point, depending on what happens. So had to throw a little surprise in there. Rams, I forgot to put his position, but it's Jason Oweh. And he is a linebacker for the Ravens. And again, I felt like value here. Oweh might be a little slow this year, but the guy is an absolute physical freak. And he could play any linebacker position and maybe a box safety position. So depending on what he gets labeled as, this guy could be a crazy point stacker. So a little bit of a projection pick again, but I think it fits the Rams team. Texans, again, they need a lot of help. And to me, on offense, I don't think that he only has like 2 wide receivers on his roster right now. So I was looking for the next best wide receiver, and this pick kind of jumps out at me. St. Brown's not necessarily the fastest, but he's a strong player. He's a hard worker, and somebody's got to catch the ball in Detroit. He could very easily become an Michael Crabtree or Anquan Bolden type player who's going to eat up receptions and maybe score some touchdowns. And maybe his yards won't be that great, but he'll be a solid contributor for several years. At 30, I have the Eagles grabbing some more offensive help. Toney is a tough one for me because he's hard to project as a wide receiver. He had, if I remember right, he had some drops in college, and he kind of projects more as a gadget type player, at least early on. But if you can get return yards out of him, if you can get rushing yards out of him, if you can get some receptions out of him, he could end up, a solid number 2 or 3 option at wide receiver for the Eagles. Pick 31, Dolphins. I was kind of feeling like they need point producers here, and it's really tough to look around and find guys that they really need. So I went with a cornerback who is going to start right away. He's probably going to get picked on quite a bit, so he's going to have a lot of chances at interceptions and at tackles. So I felt like this was a decent place for the first corner to go compared to some of the offensive players that were on the board. And to round out the first round, I have the Bills taking a projection pick here. Nico Collins is a wide receiver. He played for Michigan, but he opted out last year. But if you watch some of the highlights and tape, he looks like he could be a number one wide receiver in a pro style offense, given a little time. So if he develops well, this could be a crazy steal at number 32. May not work out well this year, but going into next year, this might end up being the steal of the draft. Just my opinion. All right, guys, I don't want to go into any more detail or keep you guys any longer, so these are just my thoughts on the draft. I hope you enjoyed, and maybe it'll spark some conversation. And I guess we'll see how I did on Tuesday, if everyone picks and we don't get someone milking the clock for 24 hours. All right, guys, have a good rest of the weekend.